Բարև ձեզ, Azatutyun TV-ն է եթերում։ Ես այսօր հարցազրույցը պետք է վարեմ անգլերեն, մեր հյուրը Դանիել Ռայները, որը Raoul Wallenberg միջազգային հիմնադրամի փոխնախագահն է, այստեղ մեր հյուրն է, Երևանի գրասենյակի Ազատություն ռադիոկայանի, եւ ես հիմա պետք է անցնեմ անգլերենի, կներեք։ Բարև ձեզ, պարոն Reiner. Hello, Mr. Reiner. So welcome to Yerevan and to RFRL Yerevan Bureau. We're very glad to have you here as our guest, distinguished guest. And we know that you're vice president of Raoul Wallenberg International Foundation, which is doing really noble job around the world. They're sort of like identifying people from the past who helped Jewish people to escape Nazi persecution, and we know that there was at least one Armenian who was helpful as well. So now please explain us what is the purpose of this foundation, what are you doing now, and how successful you are, and why are you doing this, and just go ahead and explain.
Course. First of all, thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. This is my first time in Yerevan. Certainly, I hope not my last one. It's very
You liked it?
I like it very much. From the very little I've seen, yes. It gives me a lot of pleasure to be here, and I would like to come more often. I will say a few words about the International Raoul Wallenberg Foundation. Basically, it is an NGO, a non-governmental organization based in New York. But it has a global reach. It has offices also in Jerusalem, where I am the vice president of the organization and also the head of the Jerusalem office. We have offices also in Berlin, in an evangelical church, and in Buenos Aires, a very big presence there. It's not a Jewish organization. It's an organization which includes all types of people from all walks of life, religions, and nationalities. It was founded several decades ago by the late U.S. Congressman and Holocaust survivor Tom Lantos, and by Mr. Baruch Tenenbaum, who is an Argentinian businessman and humanist who dedicated most of his life to interfaith activities. Our main mission is to preserve and try to spread around the legacies of Raoul Wallenberg, who was probably the most prominent of all the saviors during the Holocaust, and all the others. And we do so by actually working in two fields. One is research, meaning that we try to shed light on unknown cases of rescue during the Holocaust. And the other is education. We have in mind that it's very important to try and instill the legacies of Wallenberg and his likes into the hearts and minds of the young people. So we have educational programs in several places in the world. And of course, we also campaign for Raoul Wallenberg, because we have to understand Raoul Wallenberg was a great hero. He was a Swedish diplomat belonging to one of the most prominent families in Sweden, who launched himself, being 32 years old and with no diplomatic experience, in wartime Hungary with the sole mission to try and save the Jewish community there. And he managed to do it. He saved scores of people in only 7 months, from July 1944 until January 17th, 1945, a tragic date because he was actually, after the Soviets liberated Budapest, he went to the Soviet headquarters trying to discuss the future of the refugees, and for some reason that even today is being discussed by historians and scholars, he was imprisoned by the Soviets, and basically his fate is not known even today. He's shrouded in mystery. So we try to campaign for him, trying to put pressure, positive pressure on the Russian authorities, because we believe that they do have information about what happened to Raoul Wallenberg, and not only to him, also his driver was in prison, Wilhelm Schlangfelder, and both of them disappeared. And one of our last activities, which was announced actually by our chairman, who is an Argentinian, very prominent Argentinian, which I guess you know him here, Mr. Eduardo Arnequian.
Oh,
he's of Armenian descent. He's our current chairman. And Mr. Baruch Tenenbaum, they met with the UN Secretary General, Ban Ki-moon, and they announced an important reward for information about Wallenberg's fate and also the fate of his driver, meaning really information that could be reliably be verified by scientific means, DNA, so forth.
So those who have some kind of information about,
they will have an
Wallenberg's
incentive to come forward and say what happened to him, because we should assume, unfortunately, that he's dead, because he was 100 years old last August. And if he's dead, he deserves to have a grave, a proper grave. His sister, half-sister, Nina Lagergren, who is 93, she's still alive in Sweden. His half-brother, Professor Guy von Dardel, passed away 2 years ago. He campaigned all his life to try and get his brother back home, to no avail. And he has a widow and 2 daughters who are continuing the struggle, and we're trying to accompany them. So in the last few days, we sent letters to many heads of state, urging them to emulate what President Obama has promised, to raise this issue with the Russian authorities. We shouldn't give up. We shouldn't give up. He was a hero, and he deserves to be recognized, which he is, and not forgotten.
Now, Mr. Reiner, you have a lot of heroes also around the world. Those people who really helped Jewish people during World War II, and you somehow glorify them, and and tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, please. I told you before that we have 2 main fields in our activity. And
like, if you find this kind of people, what do you do with them?
First of all, we try to investigate and try to collect testimonies. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult because of the time elapsed. We shouldn't forget that the war happened in the 1940s. But we have many successes. In the last few years, we have found a significant number of people whose stories were not known, and we organized special files, and whenever possible, we passed them on to the Israeli museum, to the Israeli authority, in order for them to get proper recognition as righteous among the nations.
So you call them righteous among
Righteous among the nations is the official denomination given by Yad Vashem in Israel. We, in general terms, refer to everybody as rescuers, because Yad Vashem has a little narrow criteria about who could be recognized. We think this criteria should be broadened. So we speak of rescuers or saviors, okay? But many cases were officially recognized. And in all cases, we try, as you said, to glorify, to pay tribute to these persons. Most of them are dead. Although I remember one case 3 years ago in Hungary, a mother and a daughter, and the daughter was still alive, and we managed to present our tribute to her while she was still alive, and she passed away, unfortunately, 1 year later. So we try to unveil cases, and what's very interesting, what brought me here, is one of the last cases.
That's the most interesting part.
Yes, quite. I think the Armenians have a very interesting contribution to this. It's a very small country.
Yes.
But nevertheless, so far, 23 Armenians have been officially recognized as righteous among the nations. 23. Which is a huge number for such a small country. I don't want to speak of other countries which are larger, we have less.
But if you compare with
we're comparing with it's a very distant. And I think this has to do with the spirit of the Armenian people, who knew how to empathize with because of their own tragedy in 1915. They knew how to empathize with another people, but not only Jews. Many people were persecuted by the Nazis, homosexuals, all kind of communists, and whatever. And I think that the Armenian conscience is the one that dictated their behavior, that they could not stand idly by while innocent victims were being butchered by the Nazi extermination machine. And I think it's something impregnated in the psyche of the Armenian people, which is so nice. And what brings me here is a posthumous homage to Dr. Harutyun Khachatrian.
Harutyun Khachatrian.
I hope I pronounced the name
yes,
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right. Harutyun Khachatrian.
He was a physician, an Armenian physician. He was imprisoned by the Nazis, and in the concentration camp he treated a Jewish victim, Joseph Kogan, who was very seriously wounded. He saved his life one time by treating him, and then he provided him, together with some friends, with falsified papers which allowed Mr. Kogan to flee, to escape. And Mr. Kogan survived the war thanks to him. This story was not known. It was brought to our attention. It was carefully investigated. And now we are here tomorrow at the Presidential Palace.
Yes.
We're going to bestow a posthumous medal to Dr. Harutyun Khachatrian, to his family.
So actually this award ceremony will happen in Presidential Palace?
That is correct, tomorrow. Yes, in the Presidential Palace. Yes. Together with
why
his
in
family.
the Presidential Palace?
Well, I think it's a symbolic venue.
Yes. Okay.
You know,
and the president will be present.
The president
right?
will be there, and he will also be distinguished on behalf of all the other Armenian saviors, those who were already recognized and those who are still anonymous, but they exist. Because
you have also those that are anonymous, and
of course,
you don't name them, but they exist.
They exist because we know from our experience that there is a great number of Armenian rescuers whose stories have not been unveiled yet, and we're working on that.
Or maybe they are afraid of.
You know, many years elapsed. It's not an easy task. We have many volunteers, historians, so forth. It's like sleuth work, painstaking, but we think we can do it. So the president will also receive a distinction on behalf of all the others who can not necessarily we name them by name, but you know the Armenian spirit.
So very nice, very nice. Now about this same foundation, I know that there is also some sort of like Armenian group that is helping, not Armenian, but there's a branch of your foundation that is helping you to find this Armenian.
Well,
people.
yes, we have volunteers here. Also, in the case of Dr. Khachatrian, who help us because we understand this is we have a trove of information that has to be unearthed.
Yes.
And Armenia is a very interesting case. Okay. And again, I think it has to do with the Armenian own suffering, which made them so active in the rescue and trying to rescue.
So I assume that if your chairman is Eduardo Ernekian, then the foundation has a lot to do with the Armenians, right?
Well, we have, of course, we have also an Armenian chapter because we are inspired by Mr. Ernekian, and we are very happy about that we discovered this issue.
A little bit more about that. For example, any Armenian connection that your foundation has, or perhaps you can tell a little bit more about the Armenian and Jewish faith that in some cases are so...
I can tell you an anecdote. First of all,
Similar.
I myself, I'm Jewish. The organization is not Jewish, but I can see so many affinities between the Jewish people and the Armenian people. The common suffering, the tragic story of both peoples, the vibrant diasporas these people have. Two small countries, quite isolated, with many enemies. So there are a lot of similarities, and I can give you an anecdote. We have many volunteers. We are blessed. Many volunteers. We have a lady in the United States. I will not give a name, but and she's half Armenian, half Jewish. And her father was Jewish. He passed away, and her mother Armenian. And actually, on both branches of her family, she suffered from the genocide and the Holocaust. It's unbelievable. And I work in Israel. In Israel, there is a nice Armenian community, both Gentiles and Jews. So we try to recruit as many volunteers as possible, trying to help us with the language, of course. There's a language barrier. We're very happy that we are doing things in Armenia because We think it's a very important story to be told
Perhaps
here.
there should be more educational stuff here.
That's the next step, I think.
Come up with some, like,
I think
books,
we're trying to create a
some
critical mass of research on Armenia.
More PR.
More PR, yes, because we're not known here. We still don't
yes.
have a physical presence. But maybe in the future, you know, we are...
Maybe that could be also useful for Armenian experience itself, right?
Absolutely.
We share the same faith almost. And the other question is about the Armenian genocide. As we know, you know, there are still some issues in Israel. The Israeli government is still, you know, shying away from recognizing the Armenian genocide, despite the fact that some officials privately would say that, yes, that's the case. But when it comes to the government, then when they are in the office, they're not doing that. And do you think that at some point Israeli government will go ahead and, you know, recognize,
it's a good
or
question.
the Knesset maybe?
I cannot speak for the Israeli government. What I can tell is in the last few years, and I've been following this issue quite closely, there are several members of the Knesset, of the Israeli parliament, who have been very, very active, raising motions once and again about the Armenian genocide. And many important scholars from Israel, like Professor Michael Stone and Professor Charny, Professor Yair Oron, who are trying, and also a very good friend of ours, former absorption minister Yair Tzaban, are very active on this. So I don't know, I'm not a spokesman of the Israeli government. I cannot tell you exactly what's going to happen. But this is an issue that I think that time and again, every year, there are discussions in the Knesset.
You mean the public opinion is like
yes, and you see many articles in the newspapers.
Stronger on that
yes,
point.
Yes, absolutely.
There are a lot of Jewish people that I talk to, and they really say that, even some of them will say that we are ashamed that, you know, to this day, our government did not recognize genocide. I had that conversation with my Jewish friends, but we know that there were at least several attempts in Jewish Knesset to adopt some kind of resolution in the commission, and then
I can speak for my foundation. I can tell you we deal in what we call positive pedagogy, okay? Also regarding the Holocaust, we don't speak of the terrible massacres and horrors which were widely researched by so many entities and institutes, and rightly so, because it's horrendous. But we deal with the positive, with the light, and that's why in the last few months we started to investigate the issue of people who helped Armenians during the genocide, which is a very, very difficult task because of the time elapsed.
There are some taboos.
It's 100 years, but also 100 years.
Yes,
okay.
yeah.
I think we found a survivor here in Armenia who is 102 years old, and we sent a special crew to interview him and try to save the memory.
Yeah.
One of our main missions is to save the memory, and we're trying to find information about cases of rescue. I'm sure there were, but it's very difficult to do it. It's a very tantalizing task, but probably we'll have some success, because it's a very nice way. When you teach the positive, you learn the whole picture as well.
It would be a good idea, really, if your foundation also works on that. The other people who helped Armenians during the genocide. So, Mr. Reiner, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much. It was a great pleasure to
Bureau. Really, this is the first sort of presentation of Raoul Wallenberg International Foundation by us, and I hope that we have correspondent in Jerusalem. He will report more on this. Of course, a very good one. And,
Mr. Chernamorian.
Yes.
And you know, we will keep you posted, especially with any developments regarding Armenian rescues and so forth. I think it's very important that the public should know that.
Yes.
And I take your challenge to try and probably to instill some kind of educational program here in Armenia.
I think it's very important to know. Our young generation should learn what was the Jewish Holocaust, and they have to know more. Of course, Armenian government we have some educational materials, and also we have in our textbooks a lot about Jewish Holocaust, but I think you should do more about that.
Of course.
So thank you
Thank
very
you so much.
Mr.
It was a
Rainer.
pleasure. Thank you.